Welcome back, and thank you for choosing to spend your time listening to English today. Before we start, remember this. You don't need to understand every word. Just relax, listen, and enjoy the story. This is a funny English listening practice, so learning happens naturally while you laugh a little along the way. Let's begin with a situation that many English learners secretly fear. Imagine this. You've been studying English for years. You understand movies. You understand podcasts. You feel confident. Then one normal day, someone asks you a very simple question, and suddenly, your brain goes completely blank. This happened to Emma, who had just moved to a new country for work. On her first day, her co-worker smiled and said, "So, how are you finding everything so far?" Emma froze. She heard the words. She understood each one individually, but together they suddenly made no sense. She wondered, am I supposed to say where things are? Am I supposed to literally find something? After 3 long seconds of silence, she replied, "Yes. I found the office." The co-worker paused, nodded slowly, and said, "Great." And that was the moment Emma realized that English can be confusing in the most unexpected ways. Another day, Emma went to a cafe near her office. She wanted to sound natural, confident, and friendly. When the barista asked, "What can I get you?" Emma confidently replied, "I'm good." The barista smiled and said, "All right," and walked away. Emma stood there, confused, still waiting for her coffee. That S when she learned that "I am good" doesn't always mean what you think it means. Moments like this are funny later, but in the moment they feel very real. English is full of short expressions that depend heavily on context. And when you miss that context, the result can be awkward, confusing, or accidentally hilarious. Let's talk about another classic misunderstanding: asking questions. In English, questions are not always direct. One evening, Emma's neighbor knocked on her door and said, "Do you happen to have any sugar?" Emma answered honestly, "Yes, I do." Then she smiled and waited. The neighbor smiled back. Silence. After a few seconds, the neighbor gently said, "Could I borrow some?" That's when Emma realized that the first question was not just a question, it was a polite request. English loves indirect communication, and when you're not used to it, you can easily answer the wrong part of the sentence. Now, think about this question. Have you ever answered a question correctly, but still incorrectly? If yes, you're definitely not alone. While you listen, think about how you would respond in these situations. In the next part, we'll continue with more funny real-life English situations, including misunderstandings at work, awkward phone calls, and sentences that sounded perfect in your head but very strange out loud. Before we continue, here's a small question for you. What do you think Emma should have said in the cafe instead of "I am good"? Write your answer in the comments, and in the next part, we'll talk about it. Let's continue. If you've ever felt confident about your English and then suddenly questioned everything you knew, this part will feel very familiar. Funny English moments often appear at work, especially when people try to sound polite, professional, and natural at the same time. A few weeks after Emma started her new job, her manager sent her an email. The message ended with a simple sentence: "Let's touch base next week." Emma stared at the screen. She read it again and again. Touch base with whom, how, and why? She quickly opened a dictionary. The definition did not help. She imagined an awkward meeting where everyone literally touched something called a base. When the meeting finally happened, Emma realized that touch base simply meant to talk or get an update. No touching, no base. Just English being English. Another day, her manager said, "Can you look into this issue?" Emma replied confidently, "Yes, I'm looking." Her manager waited. Emma kept working. Later, her manager asked why the issue wasn't solved yet. Emma replied honestly, "I was looking into it." That's when she learned that, in English, look into means investigate and solve, not just observe. English phrasal verbs are especially dangerous because they sound simple but behave unpredictably. They hide their true meaning behind very common words. Now, let's talk about phone calls. Phone calls in English can feel like a completely different language. One afternoon, Emma answered the office phone. The voice on the other end said, "Hi, is this a good time?" Emma panicked. She looked at the clock. She looked at her calendar. She thought carefully and replied, "Yes, it is 2:30. The caller paused, then gently laughed and said, Are you available to talk?" Emma laughed too, but inside she promised herself never to answer that question so literally again. Another classic moment happened during a team meeting. Someone suggested an idea, and Emma wanted to show polite disagreement. She said, "I don't agree." The room suddenly felt very quiet. Later, a co-worker explained that in English, it often sounds softer to say, "I'm not sure I agree," or "I see your point," but the meaning is similar, but the tone changes completely. English communication is not just about words. It's about how strong or soft those words sound. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever had a situation where you said something correct in English, but it sounded too direct or too strange? Think about it while listening. In the next part, we'll move outside the workplace and into social situations, where English misunderstandings become even more unpredictable and often much funnier. Before we continue, here's another question for you. What does touch base really mean? Write your answer in the comments, and in the next part, we'll confirm it together. Let's continue with social situations, because this is where English misunderstandings become truly unpredictable. At work, people are polite and careful. But in social life, English becomes relaxed, playful, and sometimes very confusing. One evening, Emma was invited to a small dinner party. When she arrived, the host smiled and said, "Make yourself at home." Emma froze for a second. She looked around the living room. Should she sit? Should she take off her shoes? Should she open the fridge? She decided to stand very still and smile. Later, she learned that make yourself at home simply means relax and feel comfortable, not do whatever you want in this house. During the dinner, someone asked Emma, "So, what have you been up to lately?" Emma thought carefully and answered, "Up to nothing." Everyone laughed, not in a mean way, but in a surprised way. Later, a friend explained that the question means what have you been doing recently, not are you planning something secret. Then came the most dangerous moment of the evening. Someone told a joke. Everyone laughed. Emma laughed too, but she didn't understand it at all. Wanting to be polite, she said, "That's interesting." The room went quiet for half a second. Someone smiled and said, "Yeah, interesting." Emma learned that interesting can sometimes mean "I didn't really like that" or "I didn't get it." English speakers often hide their real feelings behind very polite words. And if you take those words literally, the meaning completely changes. Later that night, someone said, "We should do this sometime." Emma smiled and replied, "Okay. When exactly?" The person blinked, surprised, and said, "Da." Sometime Emma later discovered that this sentence is often friendly, but not a real plan. English uses vague language to stay polite and flexible. Let's stop for a moment. Have you ever agreed to something in English that wasn't actually a real plan? Think about that while listening. In the next part, we'll look at travel situations, public places, and short English interactions that go wrong in seconds, but stay in your memory forever. Before we move on, here's a question for you. What does "make yourself at home" really mean? Write your answer in the comments and we'll talk about it in the next part. Let's move into the final part with situations that happen while traveling or in public places, where English conversations are short, fast, and leave very little time to think. These moments are often the funniest because everything happens so quickly. One morning, Emma was traveling by train. A staff member walked by and said, "Tickets, please." Emma smiled politely and said, "Yes, please." The staff member waited. Emma waited too. After a few seconds, the staff member repeated, "Your ticket." Emma finally understood and quickly showed it. Later, she laughed at herself. She had answered politely, but not correctly. At the airport, another classic moment happened. The security officer asked, "Did you pack your bags yourself?" Emma thought for a second and replied, honestly, "No, I packed them yesterday." The officer raised an eyebrow and repeated the question slowly. Emma then realized the question meant, "Did someone else pack your bag for you?" Not "When did you pack it?" English loves efficiency, but only if you already know the hidden meaning. Then there are small, everyday interactions. At a store, a cashier asked, "Do you want the receipt?" Emma replied, "I'm fine." The cashier paused and asked again. Emma finally learned that "I'm fine" is not always a complete answer. Sometimes English wants a clear yes or no. Over time, Emma stopped feeling embarrassed. She realized something important. These moments are not failures. They are proof that you are using English in real life. Every misunderstanding teaches you something that no textbook can. And that's the real goal of listening practice like this. Not perfection, not understanding every word, but recognizing patterns, laughing at mistakes, and slowly becoming more comfortable with how English really works. Before we finish, think about this question. Which situation today felt the most familiar to you? Was it at work, in a cafe, on the phone, or while traveling? Share your answer in the comments. Other learners will recognize themselves in your story too. If you enjoyed this funny English listening practice, like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Listening regularly, especially to natural and slightly messy English, will help your understanding grow faster than you expect. Thanks for listening. Keep enjoying the process, and I'll see you in the next video.